Logan Paul challenges Cliff about God. Brilliant answer. Okay, not just a decent answer, no, a brilliant answer. And yeah, this little turd is in the corner again. Okay, let's go ahead and see what happens here with Logan Paul talking with this pastor. I know we've gone over Logan Paul's conversation with this pastor in regards to homosexuality a few weeks ago, but this is a new one I have not yet seen. So put the playback speed up a little bit. Take it away.
Okay, so the soul is a person that can be shaped by human experience. So like if you were to like run a simulation of like Cliff, 100 simulations of the life of Cliff in some future distant world, do you become a pastor in all 100 of those simulations? Is every one of those simulations, is Cliff a good guy? Especially if the human experience that each Cliff experience or goes through is different. And then does your soul become a different thing?
I don't think so, because that smacks of determinism. It's in the stars. It's written in the stars. You have to do this. You have to go down this path. No. When I fall down a set of stairs, I don't pick myself up at the bottom and say, phew, glad that's over. No, I pick myself up at the bottom and say, idiot, pick up your feet. Don't stumble down the stairs. It's really painful. In other words, it's not been predetermined. That's this whole issue of free will. That's why I hold you responsible and you hold me responsible for what I do, for what I say. Because
yeah, okay, but you're just kind of asserting that, right? Like determinism is a pretty strong standing philosophy, more or less, when it comes to the question of free will. So I don't really know if Cliff could just say things aren't predetermined, because they're not. A far better argument would be, even within a determinism framework, you can still make choices and have some kind of an ability to control aspects of your life.
you know I don't have to do it.
It's not a script.
Exactly. It's not a script. This whole idea that God writes on a piece of paper, which you and I are going to do tomorrow, locks it in a bank vault, and then you and I have to do what's written on the paper. That's determinism. That's fatalism. No. No, we're human beings created in the image of God, which means God partially limits his power by giving us a free will, and then we choose what we do. But God does hold us responsible. That's why I love what you pointed out about the importance of responsibility. But you know, Logan, you and Jesus are, I think, a little closer than you might realize when you talk about justice.
That's going to get clipped up, man.
Okay?
That was
justice.
That's going everywhere.
The reason is, why did Christ die on a cross? He didn't die on a cross because God is lovey-dovey. He died on a cross because God is just. And because God is just, the penalty for evil is death and hell. And Christ went to the cross, paid that penalty. Why? Because God...
Okay, so he's baking a bunch of presuppositions into his statements to make it far harder to deconstruct the dumb shit he's actually saying. Because God is just, the punishment for sin is death. No, justice refers to a punishment that meets the crime. Infinite torment is not a just punishment for a finite sin or a finite crime. He's able to kind of get away from even needing to justify how casting somebody into an eternity in hell is just. He's able to avoid that completely because he's just like, well, because God's just, the punishment for sin is death in hell. Okay, and he moves on to the next thing before anybody has a chance to be like, well, hold up, why?
Is just, the penalty for evil is death and hell, and Christ went to the cross, paid that penalty. Why? Because God's lovey-dovey? No, because God is just. The penalty for human evil must be paid. Oh, that's not cool. That's not cool. Oh, that's very cool. I understand you're an expectant father. Little baby coming into the world?
Little baby
Your
girl.
mom was bragging to me about it.
Yeah. Little baby girl.
Sounds good.
Yep.
All right, Logan. Now let's talk theoretically.
Okay.
Let's say somebody murders that little baby.
God damn it, Cliff. You didn't even get a chance to do anything. You didn't make one video.
Classic Christian conversation right here. Oh, I hear you're expecting, huh? Yeah. So what would happen if somebody brutally murdered your child in front of you and then used the baby's blood to call you a slur? What would you do then? Well, you know what God would do? Like, what the f is this Christian conversation, man?
Good response, Logan.
Horrific. I wasn't expecting this. Cliff,
All right.
come on.
Good response.
No, that's the hook.
Sorry, Grandma.
Yeah, sorry, Ma. She didn't make it.
Damn, dude.
Okay, I love your response. Why? Because you know very well that if the police or the judge lets that dude off scot-free, your baby does not matter. Now, what's fascinating is the way so many
Yeah, but God will also let the baby murderer off scot-free if the baby murderer accepts Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. So God already says that your baby doesn't matter, because if your baby's murderer happens to become a Christian, they're getting into heaven. And you, the victim who lost your child, maybe you don't believe in Christ, you're going to hell. This is disanalogous.
secular people will say, well, God's just love, so there's going to be no judgment. Really? So God doesn't judge the guy who murders my child? That's a clear statement. On
Yeah,
God's
but God does, and he will also judge the guy who murdered your child and let him into heaven if the guy who murdered your child is a Christian. Like, God does not judge based on your actions. That's why we can't earn our way into heaven. God is not just.
part. Your child, Cliff, does not matter to me. Therefore, I will not judge the guy who murdered your kid. Well, let's get one thing straight. God doesn't care about your kid. Your kid does not matter to God, and that's a lie. Jesus said, no, God does care about every single one of us, which is why when we hurt each other, when we rape each other, when we cut each other off at the knees, God will judge us for that because he loves us because we matter to him. Does that make any sense?
It totally makes sense.
It totally makes a lot of sense, yeah, but how come God also judges people who don't do anything wrong and they just don't believe the right way? That's your next question, okay?
I guess what I am looking for, what I have always struggled with is like the proof per se. Why Christianity? There's so many denominations out there, and to be able to like put your foot down on one, especially when they all have such positive teachings for the most part, it's just so hard for me. I just don't know if I'm willing to make that assertion just yet.
First of all, you're right. I can't prove God. But Logan, I think you've got God bearing down hard on you through your mom. I think it's real clear that your mom loves you.
Is that true, Mom? She's holding the cross. Can you at least get a thumbs up or something? She just holds up.
Oh, great. What is this now? Just the intervention?
Holds up the cross. Can't discuss the love of Logan. There's a cross. I do love Jesus.
I don't think that your mom's love for you is simply a chemical reaction. I think your mom has made a decision over your entire life to care for you, to provide for you, to protect you, to sacrifice for you. That is far beyond an animal instinct. That is a free decision your precious mother has made to really love you, to really care for you. Love, the experience of love, points us to reality, including some type of God. Okay, then the next question is, yeah, but who is this God? And that's where Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Confucius, Buddhists, all the avatars of Hinduism come in, all claiming to be revealing God accurately. But the historical evidence is Jesus lived a sinless life. He never sinned once. In John chapter
I love how Cliff is able to just make so many incorrect statements and draw comparisons that are totally not there, and then just keep on moving through the conversation as if he's never said anything wrong. There's not historical evidence of that, by the way. They're ancient claims of it.
In John chapter 8, he could look into the faces of his enemies and say, which one of you can prove me guilty of sin? And his enemies were silent. Secondly, he taught amazing ethical teachings that I think all of us respect highly. The Sermon on the Mount is obviously ethical genius. All right, profound ethical genius. The Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. So his lifestyle, his ethical teachings demand respect. Thirdly, you watch him die. At the moment of his most excruciating pain and agony, nailed to a wooden crossbeam, instead of cursing his enemies the way I would have, he prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Well, my respect for him skyrockets. But fourthly, and most important,
Okay, cool. So, like, you're really respectful of God, I guess? Like, this is just a story, bro.
3 days after he dies, he physically, bodily rises from the dead, and over a period of 40 days, he appears to over 500 people who see him, different times, different places, risen from the dead. Paul records in 1 Corinthians 15.
I have a question. How do you know that?
You know that in the same way that you know
Good question.
that you know that George Washington was the first president of the United States, that you know that Adolf Hitler really committed the atrocities he did. It's called historical knowledge.
But those
There's historical knowledge that there was somebody named Jesus once who existed. That's what the historical knowledge is. There's no historical knowledge that Jesus Christ was the Son of God who sacrificed himself to save us from himself. There's a ton of evidence and records of somebody like George Washington being the first president. You don't have that with Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I'm sorry, my friends, those are not even their real names. They were anonymous authors, and they happened to write the books that made the cut for the Gospels.
recent events those events you just cited happened much more recently,
Yes.
and are much more well documented,
Yes.
than
Yes.
potentially 2,000 years of lost history.
Bingo. Correct.
Yes.
But the great news is, in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we have a very, very reliable historical record based on over 5.
No, we don't. Those are not historical records. Those are ancient claims. How is that any different than having historical records of alien abduction? I can point out 50 different claims of people throughout the last 50 years, all saying they've been abducted by aliens. There you go. There's historical evidence of alien abduction. No, not really. It's historical evidence that people claimed they were abducted by aliens. You can look at other records, though, and verify if George Washington was really president or not. You don't have this stuff with the Bible.
Based on over 5,800 Greek manuscripts, 10,000 manuscripts in the Latin Vulgate, and about 9,800 in Ethiopic, Coptic, Armenian, Syriac, Gothic, and Slavic.
Cliff is
Okay,
right.
great. So there's a bunch of manuscripts. Could you please point me to the original manuscript? Oh, right. There isn't one. There is no original manuscripts. All you're telling now, Cliff, is you're making it sound more complicated, like you have more evidence, when all you're actually saying is, well, actually, they found a bunch of ancient claims all over the place. They found evidence of these claims in the Dead Sea. Okay. Still doesn't mean the claims are true. So the first and most extensive reference to Jesus was found in Book 18, states that Jesus was the Messiah and a wise teacher who was crucified by Pontius Pilate. It is commonly called the Testimonium. Nearly all modern scholars reject the authenticity of this passage in its present form, though most, nevertheless, hold that it contains an authentic nucleus referencing a life and execution of Jesus by Pilate, which was then subjected to Christian interpolation and alteration. However, the exact nature and extent of the original statement remains unclear. Interesting. So that guy just flashed us a bunch of manuscripts they have, but apparently these manuscripts they have aren't even saying what they claimed they were saying. Modern scholarship has largely acknowledged the authenticity of the second reference to Jesus, which mentions the brother of Jesus who was called Christ, whose name was James.
Even just like the whole like gay marriage thing, like correct me if I'm wrong, right? But according to Christianity, like gay marriage isn't allowed to be a thing, and I know there's a lot of circumstances of like a gay child being resented and even alienated from their family because they have super religious parents, and I hear those stories, and like I hurt for those people because a decision is being made based on a set of beliefs that people are so bound to.
Yeah, a set of beliefs that they're so bound to that don't even have any justification behind them.
But then they throw the love aside for someone in their family.
Yep.
And that kind of bothers me.
Sure. But remember, Logan, the legitimacy of faith is not determined by passion. If you're passionate about thin ice on a lake, I really believe this thin ice is going to hold me up. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You walk out on that thin ice, you're going through, sir.
Yeah.
So the legitimacy of faith is determined by the trustworthiness of the object of your faith. If it's thick ice and you believe just a little and you step out on that ice, it's going to hold you up. And you know that. If you trust a
But there isn't evidence for Christ, for Jesus.
criminal, he's going to rip you off. If you trust a reliable person, that's good. Now, here's where it really gets tricky. Let's be a skeptic, right? Let's doubt. Okay, let's start right in here in this room. I doubt you and I doubt you.
I doubt me too.
All right.
I think I doubt him.
Now, there's nothing wrong with
I
doubting.
doubt myself enough for all of us.
Exactly. Okay. But I can push that too far. I can get to the point where I say, in spite of the evidence that you two guys are reliable, I'm not going to trust you. I'm going to be a hyper skeptic.
Yeah, but there's no evidence that God is reliable. There's no evidence that God answers prayers. There's no evidence that following Christ actually leads to more happiness, more success. Nothing. Like, there is no evidence there.
In spite of the evidence that you two guys are reliable, I'm not going to trust you. I'm going to be a hyper skeptic. Skepticism is good, but when it turns into hyper skepticism, watch out. Why is it so dangerous?
Yeah, what?
Because I'll never have the privilege of being your friend. If I'm always skeptical about you, if I'm always doubting you, I will miss my friendship with both you and him.
That's an extreme. You like hyper skepticism.
Right.
I don't think I don't know if it's as extreme as you think. This is the person I was describing before. I'm so smart because I question everything. The issue with these people is you provide absolute proof that their questioning is leading them down the wrong path, and they're still unwilling to accept that as a proof point.
Yeah, because you can't just tell somebody their questioning is leading them down a bad path. Why is it a bad path? What's wrong with it?
Hyper skepticism, sure, but like
becoming more prevalent.
Just to question and doubt and not accept everything you see at face value as truth. I don't think
Jesus said you better do that.
Oh, he did?
He said, beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing. Inwardly, they are ferocious wolves, and they will eat your lunch.
Okay,
Fair
but
enough for you.
how can I subscribe to a faith when there are such obvious contradictions within the codex itself
Thank
that make
you.
it really
Yes, that's true. Like God being reliable, but not at all being a reliable source of morality when it comes to slavery being bad.
I think that makes
because
sense.
if you live a life based purely on logic, to Cliff's point earlier, How could you believe in friendship, love, any of these things that have no natural explanation? There's
there
no
are natural
logical
explanations.
explanation
Yes,
as
they
to
are.
why you feel
Yes, they are.
love.
Okay, then why doesn't
Yes, there are. There's so many natural explanations. First and foremost, there are evolutionary reasons as to why people might feel love, empathy, sympathy, and stuff like this, because it obviously maximizes our survival. If we had a group of humans in which they did not think it was immoral to murder each other, that group of humans would eventually just go extinct.
Okay, then why does an animal feel love? Why when a
I
mother...
don't know. You tell me. What's the logic?
You just said there's no logical, you just said there's no natural reason. If there's no natural reason, then why do animals feel love? That sounds pretty natural, buddy.
Explanation for the feeling of love.
Wait, so next time you see your wife, are you just going to say, hey, this is my oxytocin?
Wait. No, you're not going to say that's just my oxytocin, but the release of oxytocin does lead to the feelings of love and closeness. So yeah, it's a natural thing still.
Going off right now, we really don't have it.
That is what he would. No, that is what he
No,
would.
no, I love her. I love her.
But what is love then? If it's, from an atheist, if there's no God,
Yeah.
then it's just the oxytocin, neurochemicals, tidal chemicals.
At this point
Why
in
do you
humanity,
need-
I am unable
wait.
to give you a scientific explanation.
What? Why do you need God for that? So without God, it's just oxytocin? It's oxytocin no matter what. You're just saying God is giving it some additional meaning that you're not even able to prove.
If in 50 years the brain can be mapped out and you can say exactly why you feel what you feel, does the belief or the faith...
All right, let's look it up. Natural reason why people feel love. The science behind why we fall in love. The initial happy feeling of being in love is stimulated by 3 chemicals in the brain. Dopamine. Noradrenaline. Okay. Stage 1. Lust is driven by the levels of testosterone and estrogen in our bodies. This isn't so different from other mammals on the planet. Stage 2. Attraction is similar in feeling to the effect of certain drugs or alcohol. The emotion of euphoria and the release of a jumble of chemicals in the brain, including dopamine, adrenaline, and alertness, can make falling in love feel like an addictive rush. Stage 3. Attachment sees the release of dopamine and norepinephrine replaced with oxytocin. There are several other factors that affect who you end up falling in love with, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. A pretty scientific explanation, natural reason as to why somebody would feel love.
in Jesus go down? Because I think what's happening right now is people are getting turned on to the possible idea of more explanations for stuff and thus aren't turning to faith as frequently, I think.
All right, but I think you've raised an issue consistently now, Logan, that I'd like to address, which is science and faith in God. Science and ethics. Science and morality. All right. Science can prove that if I put strychnine in grandma's tea, she will die. Science could never answer the question, in light of the fact that grandma's loaded, big stock portfolio, why should I not put strychnine in her tea, kill her in order to get the inheritance? Science can't answer that. That's an ethical question. Science is...
Okay, just if science cannot answer that because it's an ethical question and science does not exist to answer ethical questions, does not then mean that your only alternative is Christianity.
Science is concerned with the process, the physical process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's wonderful. It's beautiful. But it cannot address the question, should I put strychnine in grandma's tea to get the inheritance?
Yep.
That's an ethical, moral question. Has nothing...
Yeah, but you could answer that moral, ethical question without ever even bringing God into it. Let's see. I want money. Why do I want money? Why do I want money so much that, according to this guy's hypothetical, I'm now about to murder somebody for it? Well, clearly I want freedom, because money provides for me a sense of freedom. But if I do this, and I inevitably get caught because of how good law enforcement is nowadays, there's no way I'm going to be able to commit murder and get away with it. So I'm pretty much destined for prison, which then would mean less freedom. And that defeats the entire purpose behind why I was even contemplating murdering to begin with. Just a very, very poor explanation from this guy. Disappointing, to say the least. So God is perfectly just, except he's totally not. And because we don't know where love comes from God, I don't even know, man. Ugh. Okay, well, there you guys have it. Logan Paul having his brain basically put through a blender in a matter of 16 minutes with this little conversation with a pastor. Poor Logan Paul. Poor guy.